We're back to the next segment on best interests of American society. I'm going to talk about ignorance, chaos, and hypocrisy. I published this book called Culture Crisis, Truth Shall Prevail, which covers this topic in more detail. Now, we all saw the mob violence in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. Now begins the political blame game. First, let me say that mob riots by any group for any purpose is unacceptable, period. Now, in the political dimension, President Trump's narcissistic speech was about what he did for America. That the election was stolen and the fake news sham. While many of his points may be valid, his speech was not focused. It roamed all over the place. And for me, it was sadly ineffective. But nothing in his speech encouraged the mob to violent action. Nothing whatsoever. Let's talk about ignorance. Past planners involved in countless public protests, especially in the capital, D.C., have always considered what-if questions and planned accordingly. Why is it that no security or police leaders said this was not predictable? It was institutional failure of security. Someone in charge did not do his or her job. If they did their job, no one would have penetrated the halls of Congress and endangered our political leaders and their innocent staff. Chaos, that's what it was, chaos. This national voting chaos was predictable. We cannot blame it on the pandemic. We have experienced many past challenges, including snowstorms, hurricanes, civil disturbances, and the 1918 pandemic. The truth is, unrequested ballots went out to hundreds of millions of people, citizens and non-citizens, including thousands of deceased people, felons, and non-citizens. Verification of illegal ballots was clearly not enforced in some states, especially in Pennsylvania. The left immediately claimed it was the president's fault and demanded prompt action without exploring the facts. The right claims that the faulty election process was the main cause of this public protest. A committee should be established in the Congress to objectively examine the facts impartially to determine the causes and solutions to this chaos for the next election in 2022 and 2024. Let's talk about hypocrisy. Some Democratic leaders, before and during their convention last summer, I should say most Democratic leaders, did not speak out against mobs. They did not speak out against burning, stealing, and violence in major cities and federal buildings. They said nothing. Why did they not speak up against Black Lives Matter and those who want to defund the police? They said nothing because it was risky. The mob might turn on them, and certainly they would not vote for them. They depended on their votes. Instead of encouraging Americans to be united, as Biden promised before the election, Biden and Speaker Pelosi added fuel to the fire by nasty and outrageous accusations against Trump and anyone else who supported him, against all conservatives who supported him. Then the social media, especially Twitter and Facebook, overreacted by immediately cutting off freedom of speech for Trumps and conservatives. They cut off freedom of speech for about 90 million supporters. 90 million American citizens, which is illegal and against the Constitution. Now, they'll have their day in court. Just because they're independent companies doesn't mean they can do this. We need more, not less, speech. Why are the Democratic leaders threatening impeachment again? Because they know Mr. Trump will come back in 2024 and attack them. We should also anticipate a Trump network to compete against extreme left social media and fake news. Now, you might ask yourself, why did we vote? We voted for the First Amendment, freedom of speech and press. We voted for the Second Amendment, right to defend our lives. Our lives. We voted for 3 Supreme Court justices to protect the Constitution and our Bill of Rights. We voted for the Electoral College, the republic system of government. We voted for funding of police and law and order. We voted for jobs to remain in America. We voted for secure borders and legal immigration. We voted for veterans who fought for these freedoms. We voted for peace and progress in the Middle East. We voted for freedom of religion. Not freedom from religion, but freedom of religion. We voted for the right to speak publicly our viewpoints. We voted for our children and grandchildren's education. They lost about a year already because of teacher unions who do not want to teach. We voted to secure our freedom and future opportunities. We voted most of all for the unborn, so that they might also have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We did not just vote for a single person or 2. We voted for the future of America. So let us fix our multi-state voting system for the next election. Now, the virus was the Great Awakening. The pandemic suddenly awakens in us our mortality and our temporary existence on this planet Earth. As I said before, the average person lives 30,000 days. That's the age 78, I think. I'm already 5 years over that. If we awaken to this truth, we might realize there is meaning to life than just existence, procreation, wealth, status, and power. We just might recognize that we are transcendent spiritual beings with human bodies and eternal souls. Now, Governor Cuomo of New York said God caused this virus. He's absolutely wrong. For a Catholic Christian, how can he come up with this? God did not create this evil virus. He allowed humans who made this evil virus, the Communist Chinese, to spread throughout the world. The Lord allowed it. He did not create it. Humans create evil. The Lord does not create evil, ever. So he allowed this obstacle to be in a persistent path to our damnation. Hence, the positive aspect of the pandemic is that God loves his creation so much, especially humanity, and he wants to save those who are heading towards the abyss. God turned the Chinese Communist evil lies and pandemic into a powerful message, while respecting our free will to choose which path to take on our challenging journey in this life. This pandemic, in many respects, is worse than a war because it spread silently, swiftly, worldwide, killing hundreds of thousands of good, bad, rich, poor, weak and strong, and the powerful. In fact, my neighbor today, I saw her being wailed out, her body in an ambulance. So those who demand equality, this is the great equalizer. The pandemic is the great equalizer. People are restricted to their homes without families and loved ones. They must now think about the priorities of their lives. What's it all about? Why did I waste so much time? How will my family survive this disaster? What does the future hold for me and all humanity? Many may turn to the Lord, hopefully, and pray for forgiveness and salvation. Some will curse and be resentful and fall away from any churches, temples. It's an awakening. It will never be the same again. The older generation who are more vulnerable will pass away, will depart us. The millennials will now suddenly have to grow up and somehow become much, much more responsible. They will not have grandpa and grandma to ask, what can I do? What should I do? It's a new world order will emerge with different global leaders, new alliances, restructured economies. The strong will become stronger, the weak will become weaker. During times of economic growth, people forget the Creator. During times of calamity, many, hopefully, will rediscover Him. What kind of society and culture have we created lately? One might argue that our times are not unlike what existed when Nero was the emperor of the Roman Empire. It was a time of widespread moral corruption, sexual permissiveness, cruelty, and the worship of pagan gods and various occults. It was a time of exploitation of the weaker, poorer masses of people. The Roman Empire collapsed from within. Will American society also collapse? Our children and grandchildren are encountering far greater challenges in the 21st century than humanity has ever experienced in the recent past. Why is this so? Because of the lack of contentment. Lack of contentment is basically greed. And greed sows the seeds of envy and aggressive competitiveness, which ultimately leads to materialism and lack of compassion for others. Let me talk about near-death encounters. In the recent past, my wife Miriam and I handled more than a dozen cases involving about 30 children during our 5 years as guardians. All of our difficult and challenging cases were children of 10 years or younger. None of our children died, but a few had serious illness and near-death experiences. In addition, our colleagues told us about near-death experiences, NDEs. Thus, our interest in the subject. The source for this is Mr. Atwater, who studied over 270 child near-death experiences. Research indicates that 85% of the children who experienced cardiac arrest had NDEs. More children are alive today than ever before and will increase because of improved resuscitation techniques. Many very young children, when they were able to speak, when they were resuscitated, they also reported as infants in the process of being born. About 76% initial experience, these young children involved up to 3 elements: loving nothingness, 2, a friendly voice, a visitation by a loving being, and or the peacefulness of an either safe light or safe dark place. 19% reported pleasurable or heaven-like experiences. 3% reported distressing or hell-like experiences. 2% had transcendent experiences in which they felt they acquired special knowledge. In an episode of meningitis, a 6-year-old reported being out of her body with a sense of being completely free of pain and surrounded by love. She reported feeling like neither a boy nor a girl, neither grown-up nor child. She felt a sense of absolute peace and completeness. When she looked down at the operating table, she saw a girl lying in bed, empathizing with her pain. On reflection, she realized she must be that girl. With that thought, she came back into her body. Her spirit re-entered her body. Like adults, children show profound changes with near-death experiences, such as altered biological patterns and more attentiveness. They have increased interest in universal love rather than love of specific people. There's a lessening of parent-child bonding. There are increased sensitivity to others' feelings. They get more distressed from news reports of violence on TV or movies. They're more interested in being of service to others. They're interested in spirituality. They have a hunger for knowledge and anything philosophical, which leads to unusual choices of reading materials for their age. They appear much more mature than children of their age. They communicate with spirits, often labeled by children as angels or guides, or as imaginary friends. They have increased sensitivity to medications, bright light, and loud noises. And finally, they have a strong desire to be volunteers for charitable causes.